The chivalric orders that controlled the governments of Portugal and Spain sold licenses to other governments, which in turn organized companies to propagate the trade. The royals of Europe were the ultimate beneficiaries of the business. For a share of the profits, they granted licenses to elite merchants and businessmen who were part of the court. Licenses to trade in slaves were sold by the merchants and businessmen to the highest bidders, allowing newcomers to join the merchant class, yet connections would supersede wealth. In America, democracy and free enterprise theoretically allowed anyone to play a role in the buying and selling of humans, but it was a handful of elite families, connected to counterparts in England and France, that took over the business. When the American Revolution broke out, Benjamin Franklin turned to the Masonic elite of France, who controlled the slave trade, to get arms, supplies, and military support. In the first 40 years of American history, the slave trading ports from Charleston to Newport were controlled by a handful of families bound by Masonic and family ties. They were not like the Jeffersons and Madisons, who saw the eventual end to the institution as befitting the new democracy. It was a mercantilist capitalism that the slave traders put above freedom and democracy. These merchants would not relinquish the lucrative trade, and seemed to stop at nothing in fighting abolition. The presidency was something members of the mercantile elite felt they could buy, and when money couldn't decide an election they used other means to seize control. In an effort to derail abolition, Presidents Harrison and Taylor suffered sudden and suspicious deaths that put pro-slave vice presidents in power. When even death failed to halt abolition, the country wound up in the most destructive war it ever fought. The Civil War introduction ended at Appomattox, where the armies of Jefferson Davis surrendered, but not for the elite. A conspiracy organized by members of the quasi-Masonic Knights of the Golden Circle to kill President Lincoln sought to nullify the Emancipation Proclamation and its effects on the trade with England. The post-war efforts at Reconstruction would also be stained by another Masonic group of knights, the Ku Klux Klan. Although piracy and smuggling were no longer as profitable in the newly independent America, institutions such as the slave trade and illegal drug trafficking would take their place. The latter provided riches for the elite that would become the bedrock of the American industrial age. The illegal drug trade that the Americans and British united to create in the first half of the 19th century would be a never-ending plague. Again, a select core of families controlled the trade, and in both Britain and America they were organized in Masonic cells. Family and lodge connections were the only tickets to admittance. While it is not surprising that America's founding fathers were mostly slave owners, a legal activity, it may be surprising to discover that they were rough-and smugglers as well. Profits from drug running, smuggling, slave trading, and even piracy are directly responsible for the founding of several of the country's most important banks, which are still in operation today. New England's staunch insurance business was born, and prospered through profits earned from insuring opium and slave ships. The large railroad system that was built throughout the continental United States in the 19th century was funded with profits from illegal drug smuggling, and one of the greatest opium fortunes would provide seed money for the telephone and communications industry. The European Knights Templar was a massive organization, but at the center was a hereditary elite that controlled and reaped the rewards of the group. Even after the reported demise of the group, it retained remarkable clout and power, always behind the scenes. In America the influence of a core elite was as strong. This elite class positioned itself to control the masses no longer for holy crusade, but rather to enrich itself. Rooted in the Masonic lodge system, a new class formed through connections made at the most famous lodges, such as Introduction the Holland No. 8 Lodge in New York, and the Solomon's Lodge of Charleston, where members could control politics and legitimate business, while also enjoying the profits of corrupt and even criminal underworld dealings. The family wealth of Franklin and Theodore Roosevelt had been built on drug running. As in all opium smuggling families, inbreeding was important. The Delanotide of Franklin Delano Roosevelt was an opium smuggler who made a fortune, lost it, and returned to drug running to recoup it. Ulysses S. Grant married into an opium-dealing family with connections in Europe and America. The first families of New York and New England who graciously provided funds for Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Brown, and Princeton universities donated money earned in the illegal drug trade. The same men would build railroads and textile mills, found banks and insurance companies, and keep the family wealth intact for generations to come. Besides the Roosevelts and Grant, other presidents including Taft and both Bushes were connected by a bizarre cult at Yale, that was founded by and funded with money from the China trade. That organization is as secretive, elite, and powerful today as it was 2 centuries ago. Other presidents have been connected to piracy by their relations. John Tyler married into a family whose status was achieved on pirate booty. Millard Fillmore's great-grandfather was tried for piracy. Like opium trading, piracy was an enterprise that depended on a widespread system of recognition and trust. From Cape Cod and eastern Long Island to New York City, North Carolina, and New Orleans, pirates trusted each other, and knew those in power who provided shelter, legal protection, and a market for their goods. When on land, the pirate captains reported to the powerful few who protected their trade. These connections were made and preserved through the Masonic halls. Governors, mayors, and judges licensed and invested in pirate voyages, the proceeds of which helped build family fortunes. Pirate ships were floating lodges where ritual, secrecy, and blood oaths were the glue bonding the pirates. But the rank-and-file pirate brothers were not welcome at the lodge meetings of the Holland Introduction No. 8 in New York, where the Livingston family toasted their success in backing pirates like Captain Kidd, and were still protecting pirates like Lafayette 100 years later. Piracy was not the only crime on the high seas. The American colonies also prospered through smuggling. John Hancock was a wealthy Mason whose ship Liberty would put Boston on the path to the Tea Party and Revolution. With one foot in the elite Masonic lodges, where ship owners and captains were welcome, and another in the lodges, where the workingman was accepted.